And I also want to thank the VCDL staff. As you can see, we have Pat Webb on tonight. She's the treasurer for VCDL PAC and VCDL. And we have our social media director, Ed Levine. And he will have a timer behind him when we start for the candidates. Again, I want to remind everyone, the questions are came basically from the questionnaire. We asked for input from the members. Everything that we got back was stuff that was already on the questionnaire. So it shows that our questionnaire really tracks exactly what Second Amendment supporters want to hear. And it shows that Second Amendment supporters rely on VCDL to ask the right questions. So it was really self-affirming. And I also have to make a plug for money, and I'll probably do it at the end too. So VCDL PAC runs 100% on donations. Most of them are small donations. We don't have the billionaires in our back pocket. We don't have George Soros. We don't have Mayor Bloomberg. We don't have millions of dollars, but we do have to compete. And 99% of every dollar that comes into the PAC goes straight to the candidates. We have very, very little overhead. So your money is spent very wisely directly on the candidates. So without much ado, I want to introduce our three candidates that are joining us tonight, Amanda Chase, Sergio de la Pena, and Peter Duran. And we're going to hear from each of them first for 2 minutes, and we're going to start with Amanda Chase. So go ahead, Amanda.
All right. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Virginia State Senator Amanda Chase, a second-term state senator who currently represents most of Chesterfield, all of Colonial Heights, all of Amelia. I'm a wife. My husband and I have been married 28 years. We were high school sweethearts, and believe it or not, met at Chick-fil-A. And we have 4 wonderful, amazing adult children. Our youngest son is a freshman at Liberty University, finishing up his freshman year on May the 7th, the day before our wonderful convention. We have 4 wonderful kids. Our oldest daughter is a physician's assistant. We have 2 sons that own their own business. And listen, they are my why behind I do everything that I do. Also, I would tell you, before I was a legislator, I've actually worked in management in the finance industry and working for various banks, Circuit Cities Bank, First North American, National Bank. I worked for Capital One, which, well, used to be Signet Bank Card. Now it's called Capital One. I worked at the Federal Reserve Bank in Richmond and also the Virginia Student Assistance Authorities. Now, why is that important? I understand money. I understand how it works. I understand fiscal policy. We're going to need a governor that understands the importance of money, fiscal policy, and how to run an office. I mean, basically, you're running, you have many cabinet secretaries that report to you. So it's important to have those management leadership skills. I have been in that position in the corporate world. I also have a degree in business. I double majored in corporate finance and business management. And also, I came home to raise my kids because I'm a Christian conservative Republican in that order. I would say voting records matter. And of all the candidates running, I'm the only candidate running who has a conservative voting record. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Next, we're going to hear from Sergio de la Pena.
Well, thank you very much, VCDL, and thank you for this opportunity to speak with you tonight. I'm running for governor because I want to protect the American dream. I have lived the American dream, and Virginia is the cradle of the American experiment that's created the greatest good and opportunity for the world in the history of humanity. It all began in Virginia. And the wonders of the American dream is that I'm not unique because many of you have had that same American dream. It's under risk by the socialist policies that have been put in place by Governor Northam and the General Assembly. I want to turn that around. To turn that around, we have to ask ourselves one basic question, and that is, who can win in the general? We keep putting forth the same type of candidate, and we keep losing. We keep losing because we have not addressed the issue of the changing demographics in Virginia, especially in Northern Virginia, where we now have an immigrant population that is 20% Hispanic and 17% Asian. I am that Hispanic community. I can relate to Hispanics in Spanish. I did it for President Donald Trump when I campaigned for him to get the Hispanic vote in 2016. I did 60 interviews in Spanish, and I got him, and we helped get him 29% of the Hispanic vote. I can also relate to the Asian population because I've lived in 60 different countries, or I've been in 60 different countries, and I know what communism and socialism can do, and so do they, and they do not like what they're seeing. I can also relate to the military community because I spent 30 years in the Army, retiring as a colonel. I can also relate to the rest of Virginia because I'm an immigrant. They came to this country with nothing. I worked in the fields, I've worked in the lumberyard, I've worked in a drilling rig. I've done all of the manual labor that any American in rural Virginia has done. I can relate to our voters, and I ask for your support to have the job held once by Patrick Henry, Thomas Jefferson, and James Madison. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sergio. Next, we're going to go to Peter Duran. Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you so much. All right, so VCDL, it is great to talk with you. I am so happy to have this chance to talk, at least virtually, with you. Tonight, we're going to talk about the Second Amendment. I'm a candidate for governor. I know that a lot of you haven't yet made up your mind. Who am I going to support at the Republican convention? Okay, that's fair. Go to peterduran.org. Do your research, do your homework. But tonight, I'm going to talk about the Second Amendment. We're going to talk about protecting your rights. So I was with you last year. It seems like it was 10 years ago, but I was with you when we rallied in Richmond and we proved that old saying was true, that a well-armed society is a polite society. Do you remember that? We were crammed in, elbow to elbow, some of the most heavily armed Virginians you'd ever seen, and we were the most polite with each other. Someone bumped into someone, we said, oh, excuse me, pardon me, after you, absolutely. And we had 100% gun safety that entire day. We proved that the left-leaning media is wrong. We proved that our rights are important. And we also proved that your rights aren't static. You have to defend those rights. And this is our problem. Because right now, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Kamala Harris, they want to take your rights from you. Right now, Joe Biden, they'd love to have a Democrat in Richmond next year. They'd love to have a Democrat who comes in and says, well, yes, welcome. Let's have your rules in place here in Virginia. And they'd even prefer a Republican who says, well, I talk a big game on the Second Amendment, but, you know, it is the feds, guys. We can't say no. I say no, because they do not want me as your governor. We're going to talk about that tonight, but listen to this. If Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, or any other Democrat at the federal level wants to pass a law that violates your rights here in Virginia, you're going to hear me talk about it tonight. We're going to say no. We're going to be a constitutional commonwealth, and I'll talk more about that.
Thank you so much, Peter. The first question, we're going to start back with Amanda. This question's been asked of all the other participants and all the other forums. Are you a member of VCDL, and what other Second Amendment organizations do you belong to? Go ahead, Amanda, you have 1 minute.
So to the best of my knowledge, I am a member of VCDL, member of the NRA. I have a 100% score with VCDL, lifetime score, A rating with NRA, lifetime score, and I carry. I was honored to speak at the annual VCDL rally back in 2020. And I believe I'm also involved with the Deer Hunters organization. And I'm also a member of the Chesterfield County Fraternal Order of Police.
Great, thank you so much. Next, Sergio. You're muted.
How's that? Okay, so, sorry about that. So thank you very much. Great question. I am a member of the NRA. I have an AQ rating. I'm also I have a top rating from VCDL. And what I know about weapons and guns is what I practiced when I was in the military. I spent 30 years serving my country. And what I found is that tyrants like to take away guns. And I've seen that all over the world. And what we're seeing right now is our government attempting to do exactly the same thing here in the United States. We cannot let that happen. Our state seal tells tyrants to watch out. because we will not tolerate tyranny, because the way you start to tyranny is you disarm your populations. And I've seen it in country upon country that I've visited. I've got countless examples. And this is the reason that I'm running, is I cannot see this happening to our country. We have to stand up and say no. So thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. Okay, go ahead, Peter.
Thank you so much. Look, this is my view. Protecting our Second Amendment rights is not about, it's not about collecting merit badges. It's not about collecting club memberships. We've had too many Republicans for too many years who have burnished their reputations on, oh, I'm part of this membership and I'm part of that membership. And what happened? The left put a little bit of pressure on them and they crumbled. We had too many Republicans over too many years who have crumpled in front of the left. And let me tell you why I believe so strongly in the Second Amendment.
I think Peter froze up there. I don't know if you can hear us.
Gun owner in Virginia, what is the first thing that socialists do when they take power? They go around and make a list of every single gun. And then they go around and they collect every single gun because they're afraid of people who have the ability to defend themselves. Ultimately, when we're talking about defending your Second Amendment right, when we're talking about defending your ability to defend yourself, we are seeing very dangerous trends right now occurring in the United States. And if we're going to step up and push back, we need to vote this November.
Thank you, Peter. So the next question, we're going to start with Sergio, and it will be in the chat. So, some of these are, a little bit lengthy because they involve legislation. So the question, Sergio, is this. In 2015, the governor enacted emergency regulations prohibiting concealed firearms in offices owned or occupied by executive branch agencies. In 2021, these no-gun policies were codified into law by the General Assembly. As we've seen at Virginia Tech and later the Virginia Beach government building, gun-free zones enable mass murderers to shoot and kill until a good guy with a gun shows up. Will you, okay, whether it is police officer or everyday citizen. Sorry, I lost my way there. This happened twice in Texas at churches. Will you support legislation that would repeal the state government building gun ban, allowing people the right of self-defense, and why?
Absolutely. I attend Cornerstone Church in Leesburg, Virginia. And one of the things they do very well there is they have a very professional team of individuals there that make sure that everybody there is protected. If you create gun-free zones, you are inviting criminals to attack. In Colorado, I lived in Colorado Springs, and there was a church attack. And there was a sense that everybody was not safe. The church responded, and the attacker was killed. In Aurora, Colorado, which is east of Denver, they had a similar attack, except it was a gun-free zone. And guess what happened? There was wholesale murder in a movie theater. This is what happens when you disarm people. If you have to worry about somebody pulling a gun on a criminal, you're going to be a lot more cautious about using that weapon. When we create gun-free zones, we are creating an environment where people can be killed and not protected. So thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. Okay, next, Peter.
Well, on this question, I think we're going to see it a couple times tonight. I think the Republican candidates, certainly the ones who have shown up for your forum tonight, we agree. Who disregards gun-free zones? Criminals. Who disregards gun-free zones? People who want to take guns and disregard the law. And law-abiding citizens are the ones who don't bring guns into gun-free zones. Obviously,
Stop.
I'm sorry, Amanda? You okay, Amanda? All right, well, gun-free zones, I'm opposed to them. Look, you have a right to defend yourself. You have a constitutionally guaranteed right to self-defense. And what we're seeing is a tactic that slices your rights off. Little slice, little slice, little slice. What could be opposed to? Who could be opposed to that? We have to say no to protect your rights.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, go ahead, Amanda. You have 1 minute.
Since Amanda was had some background noise, I muted her, so give her a second to unmute.
Okay.
All right. So
Appreciate it.
thanks, everyone. Listen, many of you all I've known for a very long time, and you know where I stand on the Second Amendment, especially as it pertains to gun-free zones. They do nothing more than disable law-abiding citizens. And I've consistently voted against disarming law-abiding citizens, especially this patchwork. Okay, we got to go. I'm sorry, y'all. No, stop.
I'll get your bitch ass in the car one.
Speaking of a Second Amendment moment,
What the hell?
we just had to, oh my goodness. We are exercising our Second Amendment rights right now on our car, where we had somebody road rage trying to get on us. Anyway, my apologies. So I fully believe in the Second Amendment. In fact, we actually carry on our campaign van. And wow, it's important that, you never know, even driving on the campaign, when you're going to have to exercise your Second Amendment rights. And we just avoided a scene while I'm here doing this Second Amendment rally. I promise this is not staged right now, which is, oh my gracious.
Okay, well,
I'm a little,
please be careful.
come back to me in just a minute, please.
Okay, you're gonna be second in this next question, so be careful.
Thank you. Thank
Okay,
you.
so the next question, we're starting with Peter. Peter, in Virginia, we have constitutional open carry. Will you support constitutional carry legislation that would allow citizens to carry firearms openly or concealed at the individual's discretion for any reason except for the while still allowing the individual the option of applying for a concealed handgun permit?
100% yes. But more importantly, Amanda, I hope you're okay. It sounds like you've got kind of a situation there. So I hope you're okay, Amanda. Yeah, sure. 100% yes. Why is this in question? The right to bear arms shall not be infringed. It's pretty plain. Anyone who can read English can see that. So yes, 100%. I don't need to camp out and explain too long on this. I support constitutional carry. And if we're going to be the best state in the country, as I put out with my vision for protecting the Second Amendment, absolutely, we support constitutional carry. It's a no-brainer for me. And we stand up against the left and we defend your rights to do the same.
Thank you, Peter. And Amanda, if you're ready, the question was about constitutional carry for 1 minute.
Yes, so I have actually voted for constitutional carry. As the next governor of Virginia, of course, I will support constitutional carry. We don't need a piece of paper to exercise our First Amendment rights, and we shouldn't need one for our Second Amendment rights, period.
All right, thanks, Amanda. Go ahead, Sergio.
Well, thank you very much for the question. I'm with the team. We should not infringe upon the Second Amendment. It's an amendment for a reason. It's an amendment in the Constitution so that all Americans are afforded that same very right. And what we're seeing is just any way possible by the governor and the General Assembly to nibble away at the Second Amendment. So this is a ploy. This is just one of the tactics. It's like eating an elephant. They keep on nibbling away a little bit at a time because they just want to make sure that anything they can do to weaken the Second Amendment, they're going to do. And it doesn't matter what it is. So whatever they can come up with that makes any semblance of sense, they're gonna work at. And that's the way socialists operate. You've got to start nibbling away, and that's exactly what they're attempting to do, and we can't let that happen because this is one of the basic rights as an American, and we will not let it happen. As your governor, I will not. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. We're going to start with Amanda for the next question. So you have 1 minute. The question is, red flag laws strip a citizen of not only his right to keep and bear arms, but also his right to due process and presumption of innocence in advance of a crime being committed. Unlike temporary detention orders, which Virginia has had for years, red flag laws do not provide help for someone having a mental health crisis. In the 2020 legislative session, a red flag bill, emergency substantial risk order, was passed and Governor Northam signed it into law. Will you support legislation to repeal the emergency substantial risk order that was signed into law?
The answer is absolutely yes. And I voted against red flag laws consistently, every time it came up in the Virginia General Assembly, I spoke out against red flag laws, talking about how they do deny due process. And listen, I will use every tool in my toolbox as Virginia's next governor to reverse what I believe is unconstitutional legislation that was passed and signed into law, even if it means using executive orders to restore our constitutional rights. I'm not going to wait 4 years for us to retake the Senate. That's our constitutional right, and it's imperative that we're able to exercise our constitutional rights.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Next, Sergio.
So again, this gets back to the heart of what I was just saying. The socialists will nibble away at any little thing that they can come up with, and red flag laws are just a perfect example of that because of the arbitrary nature of how they can use those laws against U.S. citizens. It's not a good fit. What you end up doing is you create all sorts of second and third order effects when you have these red flag laws. When I was in the Army, we had cases where laws that infringed upon our soldiers' Second Amendment rights would be used against them. And then after having trained individuals for a lifetime, they have some sort of stipulation put upon them that makes them not eligible to carry a weapon, which makes it very difficult to be in the military if that happens. So these kinds of things, not only do they affect day-to-day citizens, but you have to take into account what impact does it have on those in the military and other people just like it. Too arbitrary. I would not support any kind of red flag law. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. Go ahead, Peter, 1 minute.
Thank you. So I agree with my fellow candidates. I'm opposed to red flag laws that deny due process. That's pretty obvious to any gun owner. We're concerned. We're concerned that someone could, a neighbor could call up and say, well, you know, this and this or that and that. And next thing you know, we don't have our firearm anymore or our firearms. But more importantly, notice the question. The question is focused on Virginia. Virginians, as I started off by saying, federal power is coming. What happens if we have a governor who's a Democrat or a weak-kneed Republican? What happens if there is a federal red flag law that denies you due process? We need a governor who says no. We need a governor who speaks for you and says, we are not going to enforce those laws here. We need a governor with the courage to stand up to the federal government and say, we won't enforce laws that violate your due process. This is a big one, Virginians, Republicans. We need to stand together on this.
Thank you, Peter. The next question, we're going to start with Sergio. Sergio, in the 2020 legislative session, the General Assembly passed a law weakening Virginia's firearms preemption law. Local governments can now implement certain restrictions on carrying. This creates a dangerous patchwork of laws in which gun owners can easily and unintentionally run afoul of the law. Will you support repealing the changes the General Assembly made to the preemption law since 2020? And I will note here, only 5% of Virginia localities have even felt it necessary to pass their own local gun control. So go ahead, Sergio.
Well, thank you very much. Again, this goes back to the heart of what I was just saying. I have friends that live in Northern Virginia where these laws are impacting citizens. And what happens is you have to have a map of where you can go and where you can't go, where you have if you have a weapon, you know, are you going to then become a felon because you happen to cross into a place where you shouldn't have been? This is ridiculous because now what you've got is localities running roughshod over the federal government and over our Constitution by creating these situations where they supersede our Constitution. That just doesn't work. We are a constitutional nation and we are a constitutional commonwealth. And as your governor, I'll make sure that we keep it that way because this is exactly what I'm getting at. This has to do with the nibbling away and the socialization of our commonwealth. And this is the reason that I'm running. We cannot let this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. Go ahead, Peter, 1 minute.
Well, I want to give VCDL a lot of credit here. I mean, I remember seeing you guys rallying in front of Alexandria in the courthouse there saying, no, we're opposed to these kinds of laws. I agree with Sergio on this. He's right. It's just bonkers to think that we have a patchwork now in Virginia where if you have a firearm in your car and you are driving down the highway and you happen to cross the county line, On one side of that county line, you're a law-abiding citizen. On the other side of that county line, you could be a felon. That's wrong. Obviously, that's wrong. It's wrong. So what we're going to do is we are going to say, no, we need to use the power, in this case, of the bully pulpit and the power to roll back these kinds of rules which violate your rights. We have gotten too used in Virginia to letting the left roll all over us, and I think it's about time we push back in a peaceful but legal kind of way.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, go ahead, Amanda, 1 minute.
So, I mean, for me, this is personal as someone who conceal carries every day. I don't leave my house without carrying. And it is very dangerous for law-abiding citizens to have to disarm themselves whenever they go into, for instance, in Richmond, where my office is. And now we have a new the legislature has recently just said that we can't even carry on Capitol grounds. This is an example of the localities creating this patchwork of confusing areas where you can and not carry, and it turns law-abiding citizens into felons, into criminals. You know, right after the parole board releases all these murderers, they're going to try to disarm law-abiding citizens and make us criminals and put us in jail. I mean, this is ridiculous what's going on in our country. And we have to stop that. I will make sure, once again, I may set a world book of world records on how many executive orders I file my first year that I'm in office, because I mean business on this issue. They will not infringe on our constitutional rights, period. And there are weak-kneed Republicans who are going to say, we're going to have to wait 2 years. We're going to have to wait 4 years. Not with Amanda Chase. We're going to use executive
Thank you,
orders
Amanda.
just like Terry McAuliffe did with Executive Order 50. Sorry, I don't see your timer anymore.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Amanda.
Thank you.
When the timer goes away, you ran out.
No, I don't see it. I don't see your
Oh,
timer.
okay. Okay, the next question, we're starting with Peter. Peter, many firearm accessories and parts such as muzzle brakes, noise suppressors, foregrips, arm braces, etc., can make shooting more comfortable, accurate, and enjoyable. Suppressors can even protect the gun owner's hearing and minimize disturbing the neighbor with unnecessarily loud noise. Yet the federal government restricts or heavily regulates these firearm accessories. Do you support these items being unregulated?
Yes, I do. And I'll tell you this, because I think this is an interesting line. So I live in Arlington. I'm here in Northern Virginia. I support our Second Amendment. I was walking my dog one evening, and I was walking through this little plaza we have, and there were some Republican voters in Arlington. We got a lot of them here. And I walked up, said hello. We learned they were Republicans, and I told them I was a candidate for governor, and I support the Second Amendment. And the first question I got right out of the bat was, will you let a silencer? And I said, absolutely, because that's your right. And this Republican was a little shocked, taken back that I would just be so open about that. Gun owners, we know that there are a lot of ways in which the left likes to take a little slice, a little slice, a little slice, and before you know it, your Second Amendment, it's gone. It's really meaningless. If we're going to protect your rights, you need a governor who understands that and supports you and stands for you.
Thank you, Peter. Go ahead, Amanda. 1 minute.
So let's just go back to the voting record here. I will never, ever vote against your ability to exercise your Second Amendment right in any level. I have, whether we're talking about suppressors or bans or anything like that, I've always voted against that. You will see that same type of governor in the governor's office. And, we need to protect law-abiding citizens' ability to basically be at the same arm up just as much. The criminals are going to have, the AR-15s and the silencers and all these types of, opportunities with their guns and everything. And we need to make sure law-abiding citizens are just as prepared. And I remember in Chesterfield County, whenever, they had Antifa saying that they were going to come in all the white neighborhoods and kill all the white people. I mean, as crazy as that sounds, that's what's going on. And you want to be able to protect yourself and your family. And sometimes a handgun just doesn't cut it. So.
Thank you, Amanda. Go ahead, Sergio, 1 minute.
Well, thank you very much. So this, again, is a nibbling away at the Second Amendment. And you have to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. where else have they done this, and what other legislation have they also taken on? And they started nibbling away a little bit at a time. Look at anything that has to do with the pro-life stance. We started out with Bill Clinton's the rare abortion, to what we've seen with Governor Northam, where abortion anytime, anywhere, even beyond birth. And so what you have in the left is they start with a little and they slice and slice and slice until your rights are taken away. And the last thing we need is a weakening of the Second Amendment, especially in the current environment we're in, because Virginia's become the testbed of bad ideas that are now being implemented at the national level. And we're going to talk about some more of those, I'm sure, as this evening progresses. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sergio. Next question, we're starting with Amanda. Amanda, the term ghost guns has been thrown around a lot to scare people into supporting a ban on homemade firearms. The hype is that untraceable firearms are making it difficult to solve crime. The reality is that traces rarely solve crime or lead back to the criminal. At best, traces will lead back to the rightful gun owners of stolen firearms. Current federal and state law does not prohibit people from building their own firearms for lawful personal use. This is a historic national right and has a rich history in this state. Do people have the right to make their own guns as currently allowed under federal and state regulations?
Absolutely, yes. They absolutely do. And, I will tell you that I have members on my team who have created ghost guns. And, I feel like that we should be able to exercise our Second Amendment right to assemble guns, get parts. I mean, sometimes it's more affordable to do it that way than to buy, wholesale or retail rather. So I just think we need to give flexibility. It's flexibility, the ability to do that. And I don't see what the problem is if we're giving them, law-abiding citizens are buying them. I don't have a problem with that at all.
Thank you, Amanda. Go ahead, Sergio, 1 minute.
Again, I agree. What constitutes creating or building your own weapon? Once you start legislating down to that level, you get into levels of detail that unnecessarily restrict Second Amendment rights. So anything that's seen as putting together a weapon is going to be something that they're going to come after. That includes some of these reenactors that like to practice, old lost arts of craftsmanship. How are you going to govern something like that? And you can just extend that to just about anything. So we should be able to use our creativity in the creation of firearms. And it's one of those things that, again, it depends on what then becomes the definition of a firearm. So we don't want to put those kind of restrictions on the Second Amendment, and I would stop it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. Go ahead, Peter, 1 minute.
I'm fully supportive. My answer is yes, just as the other candidates have said yes. But I think this is a good moment to take a pause and think about this. Right now, we have a highly competitive nomination process underway for the Republicans. The Democrats have the same. Looks like Terry McAuliffe or some kind of other Democrat is going to emerge from their process, and I intend to be the nominee from our Republican process. Here's the rub, gun owners. Someone's going to have to debate Terry McAuliffe. Someone's going to have to debate some kind of Democrat who emerges from their process. And Terry McAuliffe's going to throw around a lot of ideas like, oh, we're going to just have common sense gun reform. And, oh, we're just going to swoop up and collect the weapons of war. Who would be opposed to that? The problem is we need a Republican nominee who can go toe to toe with Terry and defend your rights, and do so in a way that convinces other Virginians to rally around. This is the question you should keep asking yourself as you watch us talk tonight. Who can beat the Democrats this November?
Thank you, Peter. The next question, we are going to start with Sergio. Sergio, Virginia law generally prohibits the carrying of guns in both public and private K-12 schools, except for the police, including off-duty vacationing law enforcement officers from other states, and judges and Commonwealth's attorney with no firearm training. In 2021, the General Assembly added daycare and preschools to the list of gun-free killing zones. Even the draconian federal Gun-Free School Zone Act specifically exempts concealed carry permit holders from its restrictions and allows permit holders to carry their firearms into classrooms. Will you support legislation to more closely conform to school gun policy with the federal standards by allowing concealed handgun permit holders to have a gun on their person while on school grounds?
Absolutely. I mean, even if the federal law says that, why are we trying to restrict even that? It's ridiculous. And this is exactly where we get to. I mean, when there's school shootings, it's always the question of, well, they're gun-free zones, and then people end up dying. If you know that it is not a gun-free zone and you're a criminal, you're going to think twice about going in and doing something. If you'll recall, back during the Aurora shooting, the shooter specifically went to a gun-free zone because he knew that those people were going to be vulnerable and he could do an attack and he could get away with it. And so this is exactly the kind of thing that happens. We cannot be putting those kinds of restrictions. There's a reason why they exist. And in national defense, deterrence is what you use as a diplomatic tool. This is deterrence at the local level. We have to execute and exercise deterrence because that is a good way to keep people safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. Go ahead, Peter, 1 minute.
Okay. So I agree. I actually think that I think we need to all take a minute and realize just how absurd the left is getting when it comes on the attacks on gun owners. They like to make boogeymen. They like to make straw men out of responsible gun owners, but think about what it means to actually have to go through the process, get a concealed carry permit. It means you respect your firearm. You understand gun safety. You understand how to handle your firearm. And if you're going to have a concealed carry permit, and you go pick up your kids at school and you have CC, great. That's your right. And you're probably safer for it. Our problem is that Democrats and the left in particular like to make boogeymen, like to make straw men out of these arguments. And we need to say no. We need to push back strong. We need a Republican who can defend your rights here in Virginia.
Thank you, Peter. Go ahead, Amanda, 1 minute.
So once again, what we have seen in Virginia under Democratic leadership is basically, again, creating gun-free zones, which basically just create opportunities for victims. And so I fully support folks being able, especially teachers, to get proper training, to be able to carry in our schools. I support even more having armed resource officers in each and every school, especially in this day and time. You know, if we look historically over where these killings occur, these killing sprees, they happen at schools. And of course, with schools being shut down because of COVID, we're not seeing them as much, but I guarantee you they will start right back up again once our schools fully reopen. And you need a governor that's going to properly protect our children. Our children are our most important asset. And why wouldn't we protect them? And of course, you know, you've got even the left right now trying to take resource officers even out of our public schools, which is insane. I do believe that. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. The next question, we're starting with Peter. Peter, South Carolina was the first state to pass a one handgun a month law and repealed that law in 2004. In 2012, Virginia also repealed its one handgun a month law. In 2015, the U.S. Court of Appeals struck down Washington, D.C.'s one handgun a month law. In 2020, the General Assembly passed and Governor Northam signed a bill reinstating the one handgun a month law. Will you work to repeal the one handgun a month law?
100% yes. This is a dumb law. It doesn't stop crime. It doesn't stop attacks. And I do want to echo what Amanda said because she raised a good point, and I want to underscore that. When it comes to schools, we do need armed resource officers on campus who can protect our kids. If there is a tragic event, if a criminal is thinking to do harm to kids, they're going to think twice if they know that every school is protected not only by an armed resource officer, but someone who is trained in responding to situations that can protect kids. So Amanda, I'd agree with you on that. But when it comes to this one handgun law, it's about the silliest example I've ever heard, but also the most egregious example of when the left thinks, all right, we're going to start restricting your ability to protect yourself, your ability to exercise your rights. We're going to push back against this. We're going to win, Virginia.
Thank you, Peter. Go ahead, Amanda, 1 minute.
So yeah, and I would absolutely repeal this, and it's actually one gun every 30 days. So a lot of people were really confused when this legislation first passed. Of course, I would completely repeal it. I don't think the government should be legislating what we can and cannot purchase. It's very similar to healthcare, where the government was trying to force us to buy healthcare. I don't think the government should be putting restrictions on us. I think of all the many gun shows that I've attended, and many times you find good deals, right? And you want to buy more than just one gun. It's just not the role of government to be putting those limitations on law-abiding citizens. And I know they put the exception in there if you are a concealed carry holder, but still, there should not be any restrictions at all. I call it the freedom to shop.
Thank you, Amanda. Go ahead, Sergio, 1 minute.
Yes, 3 months ago, I went to the Marine Corps PX at Henderson Hall, and I purchased a Sig Sauer 365, beautiful gun. I went out and shot it in Victoria. I tried to buy a second one because they had a great deal. They had the red dot sight on it. It was perfect, and the price was right. And I couldn't buy it because I was a week shy of making that time frame. And so what we've seen is those bad ideas that began here in the Commonwealth are now being trotted out by, guess who? The federal government. And who's presenting it? Our two senators. They've presented exactly the same law at the national level. Again, they want to nationalize these bad ideas that they're trotting out in the Commonwealth. And this seems to be a pattern because they know that they can use this as a test bed of socialist ideas that they can now implement at the national level. We got to stop it because this is exactly the direction that the country's going to go, having started in Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. On the next question, we're going to start with Amanda. Amanda, when the National Instant Criminal Background Check System was developed and the requirement for background checks was enacted at the federal level, it was with the understanding that private sales would be exempt. The purpose for this was to prevent a de facto gun registry and the threat of future mass confiscation of firearms. Do you support the repeal of Virginia's mandatory background checks on private sales? And will you discourage prosecution under this unconstitutional law?
Yes, and yes. And I will go further to say that I don't think the government should know. I'm against all government registries of how many guns we have, what types of guns we have. It is not their business. The Second Amendment was designed to protect ourselves against tyrants, both foreign and domestic. And it is really not the role of government to know that. So I stand firmly on that issue.
Thank you, Amanda. Go ahead, Sergio, 1 minute.
Thank you. That's exactly right. Guess what? If they know what you've got, if they know where you have it, they're going to come after it if they so desire. And the more you nibble away at the laws, the more you weaken the laws, and the more that we become accepting of these changes, the more likely they are to attempt to do it. And I've seen this all over the world. I think Jason Miar I've heard his speeches. I agree with him. He talks about how in Cuba they came up and mounted up the weapons. I saw it in Venezuela. I've seen it in Peru. I've seen it in Bolivia. I've seen it in Ecuador. Once the government decides, hey, it's time to scoop up the weapons, they do. And then they always have these buyback ideas that never really make any sense because what it really is legalized confiscation. They may give you some modicum of compensation, but that's an excuse to disarm a population. A disarmed population is a more compliant population. It's also one that's more vulnerable to tyranny. And this is the reason that we have the Second Amendment, and this is what we will defend. That's what I will defend for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. Go ahead, Peter, 1 minute.
I agree. Absolutely. It's impractical. And it's also a gun grabbing scheme by the left to create these kinds of mechanisms, because really what you're at the end of the day talking about are private sales. But Sergio, you and I agree on this one. I've seen it myself. When socialist countries went socialist in Europe, the very first thing they did, and I saw it, and I mentioned this at the opening of my statement, the very first thing they did was go around and take an accounting of all the firearms in society. And the next thing they did is went around and rounded those firearms up. I know that if we're going to protect your rights, we need to actually push back against the left here. But again, here's the challenge. We have to debate Democrats on this because we just can't say, yes, we support the Second Amendment. Yes, we're opposed to this. We have to create a winning political coalition that can actually win elections, gun owners. And if we're going to do that, we can't be weak-kneed, and we have to be convincing.
Thank you, Peter. The next question, we're going to start with Sergio. Sergio, from an official press release from the office of Governor Northam, quote, during the 2021 General Assembly session, legislators approved a constitutional amendment that affirms the fundamental right to vote and automatically restores the civil rights of any individual upon completion of their sentence of incarceration. The constitutional amendment has to be passed again by the General Assembly in 2022 before going to a vote or referendum, unquote. Will you work to make the restoration of the right to keep and bear arms automatic as well?
This is this goes to the heart of what is the penal system for, and how does that apply? If you allow somebody out of prison, you should be restored your rights, and those should be all rights. Many times, if you talk to people who've been in jail, many end up in jail just because they did something really stupid. There are some heinous, evil, rotten people that don't deserve to come out of jail, but that's another topic. If people are that way, they should be kept away forever. And we've not seen that with this General Assembly and this governor. We've seen the horrific things that have happened in the parole board. But when you have individuals that have done something stupid and they've been able to pay what they owed of society, they should be restored their rights, all rights. But again, those that shouldn't be out of jail should stay in jail.
Thank you, Sergio. Next, Peter, 1 minute.
Kathy, what was the exact question? That was a very long question. I was trying to follow along. What was the question?
Will you work to make the restoration of the right to keep and bear arms automatic as well, since the governor is restoring all other rights and allowing people out of jail?
Automatic for felons who are released from prison.
The quote was, legislators approved a constitutional amendment that affirms the fundamental right to vote and automatically restores the civil rights of any individual upon completion of their sentence of incarceration.
Yeah. So
that's the quote from the governor's office.
Look, Kathy, there's going to be some felons who get out of prison, and maybe they've served their debt to society, and maybe they've been reformed, maybe they haven't. I'd want to look into this one. I don't think that is a ding against the Second Amendment. I just think that there's some very bad criminals out there, and I'd want to look into that one.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Amanda, 1 minute.
Amanda, you're muted.
Okay, here we go. My apologies. So to answer your question, listen, if you have done your time, you've done the crime, then you should be able to have your rights restored, including your basic ability to protect yourself, the Second Amendment. And I think that we should, it's protected under the Constitution. If you've already completed your time for the crime that you've served, then you should have that right.
Thank you, Amanda. The next question, we're going to start with Peter. Peter, Article 1, Section 13 of Virginia's Constitution reads that a well-regulated militia composed of the body of the people trained to arms is the proper, natural, and safe defense of a free state. Therefore, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. that standing armies in the time of peace should be avoided as dangerous to liberty, and that in all cases, the military should be under strict subordination to and governed by the civil power. What does that mean to you?
It means that we should have the best National Guard in the country. And it means that the right of individual citizens to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I know that the left likes to make a really big deal about the militia parts of both our federal and our state constitutions. This is just a canard. This is just a way in which they can try and slip in a wedge and slice off a little bit more of our Second Amendment rights. And I'm a pretty reasonable guy. I think most people are reasonable, and I could read the Constitution of our Commonwealth and the federal government just like anyone else. And I know that it means both. It means we need to have the best National Guard in the country, and it means that your right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is where we push back, and we expose the absurdity of the left when they attack gun owners on this point.
Thank you, Peter. Amanda, 1 minute.
So what this means to me is that militias are protected in our Constitution. It is a constitutional right for law-abiding citizens to form a militia to protect themselves against terrorists, both foreign and domestic. The left wants to use this to make us look like extremists and radicals, which we are not. We have to stand firm on the Constitution. It is the plumb line for our rights. It is so important that you have a governor that will not give in to the pressure of the press and the left and kowtow to what is a constitutional right. And especially given what we had to deal with this year when they were coming after our guns, more so now than ever, we need to ensure that the people are protected in Virginia. Virginians are protected and are able to form a militia.
Thank you, Amanda. And Sergio, 1 minute.
Well, the National Guard is as most would characterize it, it is a militia, but it's also a trained military force and can be federalized. But if you want to form a militia and you're exercising your Second Amendment rights lawfully, there's no reasons why you should be restricted. These organizations not only deal with the use of firearms, but also the proper use of firearms. And anytime that you want to use firearms, you want to make sure you do them safely. I always propose that any weapon that you have, know how to use it. Go to the range, practice with it. Make sure that you learn proper etiquette. Make sure that you learn proper procedures. Make sure that you understand the gravity of what it is that you have, because a firearm can change a life in a second. And so having training and having organizations that promote that sort of thing are very important. And also you want to have people organized in such a way that they feel that if there's ever a need, that they have the proper training to be able to do what they're going to do.
Thank you, Sergio. Okay, the next question, I'm going to apologize. These are the last two questions and they seem really long. So we are going to, put them in the chat, but I'm going to start with Amanda for this one. Amanda, most firearms experts recognize that mechanical devices such as trigger locks create an extremely dangerous condition whereby a gun can be fired accidentally. These dangerous lock up your safety devices may render a firearm ineffective when most needed and leave an individual or family defenseless and vulnerable. Additionally, trigger locks create a false sense of security similar to that created when child safety caps were mandated, which resulted in a significant increase in child poisonings when parents came to rely on the safety caps rather than the education to protect their children. Will you oppose government mandated use of trigger locks or other such hazardous safety devices, which have the effect of making it difficult, if not impossible, to have a gun available to defend your home and family?
Absolutely, yes. And, when seconds matter, and typically that's all the time that you have if you hear an intruder coming into your house, or a few minutes ago, like my campaign, driving down the road has a crazy person trying to run us off the road. Seconds matter whenever you get into a hostile situation, and you have to be prepared to act. Now, I'm here to tell you that Team Chase was ready to act. And even on this call, while I'm doing this debate, I'm so glad we didn't have a trigger lock on the gun, because we avoided a situation that could have ended in loss of life. Trigger locks don't work the way they're intended to. We need to train our children to either train them how to shoot them, or if they're too young, we're going to protect our own kids. We love our kids. We're going to do what's best for them. We'll do what we need to do and allow families to make that choice.
Thank you, Amanda. Sergio, 1 minute.
Yes, 4 months ago, my daughter came pounding on my door at 4:30 in the morning. I was startled. She said, "Somebody is knocking at the door, Dad." I went and looked, and he's got a mask, and I don't know what he wants. But it was, at the moment, I was startled. I grabbed my gun. I ran downstairs. I look out the door. It's a cop. And there's a police officer. So I said, "Okay, fine." So I opened the door. I told the police officer I'm armed. I put the gun down. And what he was doing was checking up on somebody who had been through the neighborhood opening doors of unlocked cars. Now, what that showed me was how quickly something like that can happen. That was my daughter giving me warning. What happens if somebody kicks your door down? You don't have that much time to react. You're going to be startled. You're going to have to be ready. And if you have a trigger lock, by the time you fiddle with it, you've already missed the opportunity to protect yourself. So yes, you've got to make sure that you train those in your home what guns are all about, and make sure that they're properly trained in safety, but the trigger locks do not work.
Thank you, Sergio. Go ahead. Peter, 1 minute.
So I would completely agree with Amanda and Sergio right here. I think they've given great examples. I was going to offer a few myself, but they've done good examples. This is exactly why trigger lock mandates are a dumb idea. Now, if you choose to use a trigger lock in your home, great. Okay, more power to you. If you just make that decision, that's your decision to make. This is our problem, though, with the left, because the left wants to take that decision away from you. And they want to say, no, you don't have the responsibility. We're taking that responsibility away from you, and we're going to make that decision for you with a mandate. That's wrong. I actually believe that this is a great opportunity for us to show that we have a clear and compelling difference in vision with the left, difference in vision with Democrats. And when they try and make these kinds of arguments against us, we can use the self-protection argument, the self-defense argument, to show just how silly these top-down mandates can be.
Thank you, Peter. This last question is going to first go to Sergio, and I apologize it again. It is a long question, but it will be pasted in the chat. Sergio, effective July 1st, 2010, concealed handgun permit holders are allowed to carry concealed in all restaurants in Virginia, provided they don't consume any alcohol beverages while carrying concealed. However, on and off duty, Virginia police officers, retired law enforcement officers, vacationing law enforcement officers from other states, Commonwealth's attorney, and any judge or justice of the Commonwealth are all exempted from this prohibition. This un-American arrangement creates two classes of citizens, those on the government payroll who get special privileges, and the rest of us who don't. It seems only appropriate that there should be one standard for whether or not it is appropriate for someone carrying a concealed handgun to consume alcohol beverages in a restaurant. Will you support legislation to eliminate this double standard on carrying of handguns in restaurants licensed to sell alcohol beverages for premises consumption?
At the heart of the matter is, are we all equal under the law? The law should be equal across the board. That is the nature of the American legal code. It's supposed to be one law for everybody. One of the principles that we've gotten away from, especially with politicians, especially with those in Washington, is that there's a standard for them and there's a standard for the rest of the people. And this gets to the heart of that problem. We cannot have two standards, because once you do that, they start proliferating. And next thing you know, you end up with a situation like we currently have in our capital, where you've got fences protecting the ruling class from the citizens. And once you allow these rules to proliferate, they just continue on and on. Again, this is another example of nibbling away a little bit at a time, and pretty soon we have tyrannical governments ruling over us. And that's what we got to stop, and that's what I will stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. Peter, 1 minute.
The law should be equal for all. Regulations should be equal for all. You shouldn't get a special exemption or special pass if you have any kind of job versus if you're an everyday civilian. It also shows that the left truly doesn't really understand what it means to be a gun owner. I mean, imagine this. You've got a concealed carry permit. You have a firearm in your purse. You go meet a friend at a restaurant. You have dinner and there's a glass of wine. Oh, no, I'm sorry. You're now breaking the law. The left does not truly understand what it means to be a gun owner. And we can make this very easy for ourselves if we say there's one standard for everyone, and that standard should always break in favor of gun owners.
Thank you, Peter. And Amanda, 1 minute.
So the answer is yes. And, I don't think that there are some people, they always say some people are more equal than others. I don't believe that, right? We should have the same laws for all people. There's not a class that's more special than another class. And, once again, I'm going to reject any bill that's like a nanny state. There's personal responsibility. I don't drink, but there are people who do. You know what your limitation is. Why should you lose the right to protect yourself? Maybe just because you have, a drink or a half of a drink, what your limit is. Always going to go back to personal responsibility and allowing individuals to make those choices instead of a government having to tell someone what they can and cannot do.
Thank you, Amanda. So we're going to finish up with everybody providing 2 minutes. Please feel free to put your contact information out there for people who are listening. And we are going to start with Peter. Peter, your 2 minutes.
Okay, so VCDL, this was fun tonight. It was fun to talk with you guys. It was actually refreshing to have 2 really strong Republican gubernatorial candidates on with me to share our perspectives. I didn't really see a major wedge between either Sergio or myself. This is encouraging to me because it shows that we've got a lot of good ideas on the Republican side of the ledger. But we've also been focusing, again, on the Virginia question because we're running for governor. But most importantly, I'll end where I started. VCDL, federal power is coming. It's coming to Virginia, if either in the form of an executive order or in the form of a law rammed through by Democrats. And what I want, is to have a governor that says no. To have a governor that says, if you pass a law that violates our rights, that violates our federal constitution or our state constitution, we're not going to enforce those laws here. And when it comes to Richmond, if Democrats in Richmond push through a law that violates your rights, violates your Second Amendment, well, as your governor, I'm going to teach Democrats in Richmond the meaning of a very powerful 4-letter word, veto. We're going to protect your rights because that's the governor's job. That's the governor's job. It's to wake up every morning and know they exist in their role to protect your rights. So let's protect our Second Amendment here in Virginia as you decide who you're going to support. If you're a Republican at our May 8th convention, I want you to keep asking yourself, who is a Republican who truly believes in what they're saying and who will crumple under pressure from the left? I'm a Republican. The Democrats don't want.
Thank you, Peter. 2 minutes, Amanda, as your close.
So listen, friends and gun owners, let me just tell you from my experience as a second-term state senator who has 100% rating with VCDL, A rating with the NRA. You need a governor who can withstand the pressure. You need a governor who has a backbone to stand for your constitutional rights, even when they're under pressure. You can look an example. I took a stand against Senator Tommy Normant, who was introducing legislation against the Second Amendment, and I brought it to VCDL's attention. I left the Republican Senate caucus because a Republican majority leader chose to introduce Second Amendment restrictions, and I chose not to sit under his leadership at a very steep price. I lost all my committee assignments. I lost my seniority. They put me in the corner of the Senate. And I said, I won't bend. I won't back down because the Second Amendment is that important. And I won't sit under failed leadership. You know, it's one thing to sit on a call with a lot of friends who believe the same things like we do. But I'm just, you know, I know that when the pressure is turned on, the heat is turned on. You know that I'm not going to back down because in the Senate, I haven't done it. Whether we're talking about the mask mandate, I've sit in a plexiglass wall because I refuse to wear a mask. I also still continue to carry, and no one's going to deny me of that right. And I will make sure that we, the people, have that same basic fundamental right to protect themselves. I can withstand the pressure of the media, the lobbyists, the PACs, the national press. I know what it's like for them to come at you at all angles. And I have stood that test. Everyone knows that I won't back down. And as your next governor, you know exactly what you're going to get, a governor who stands up for the Constitution.
Thank you so much, Amanda. And last but certainly not least, Sergio, you've got 2 minutes to close.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. I want to start by telling you what my credentials are in leadership. I started out as an airborne ranger before I even went into the Army. I spent 30 years in the Army where I put people into harm's way in decisions that were potentially putting their other people's lives at risk. I know what that responsibility is like, and I did it for 30 years. Further, I joined President Trump's campaign to get more of the Hispanic vote, and I did 60 interviews in Spanish where we got him 29% of the vote. I actually worked for him. And further, he invited me to be on his transition team and later made me the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Western Hemisphere Affairs, means taking care of this half of the hemisphere in defense policy. I know how to operate at the highest levels. Though I have no political experience, it does not mean, it's more like I don't have politicians' experience. I understand how politics works because I work with heads of state, I work with ministers of defense, ministers of the interior, the interagency, the White House, and so forth. And so I know what that's all about. So what we've got to focus on for the next election is who can win in a general. We keep putting forth the same type of candidates and we keep losing. I am that immigrant because I came here not speaking a word of English. And in one generation, I am applying for the job held by Patrick Henry, Thomas Jefferson, and James Madison. I ask you to take a look at that because if you read the article written by the DCist, all of my fellow candidates agreed with me that we have to expand the voter base. I can expand the voter base. I understand my Hispanic community. I understand the Asian community because I know what they've experienced under communism and socialism. I already have the networks made. I don't need to form coalitions. I already know those coalitions and I'm part of those coalitions. So I ask you for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sergio. Thank you to our candidates. You guys answered so succinctly and quickly. You know, this was a great forum. And again, I know how precious your time is. So I want to remind the viewers that the people that spent time with us this evening. And I also want to remind viewers that the survey, which goes out, we posted the ratings, I think this afternoon, and it went out. Did it go out in an alert, Pat?
Yes,
It went out in an alert. I know
and it's posted on our website.
It's on the website. I know it looked a little wonky at first, and it wasn't lining up, but that got corrected. And I know Peter, you got the survey this afternoon, so he's going to be filling that out. So please use that as a tool because
that's already been turned in. That's already been turned in, and I look forward to a very strong rating from VCDL.
Okay, great, thank you. But please look at that because that's another, there are a lot of surveys out there. This is the one survey that's just on the Second Amendment, and it's been around for many, many years. It's relied on by gun owners and activists across the state for every election cycle. And, it's not just the statewide candidates that are going to be filling it out. The House of Delegate candidates are filling it out. And believe it or not, we have the survey for local candidates too. Last fall, VCDL PAC endorsed 66 local candidates. So it's very important to build the bench of Second Amendment candidates that are going to grow within the state system. So I just want to remind everybody to use that as a tool. And I also want to thank again, Pat Webb and Ed Levine for all the work they've done with this. You know, many hours were put into collaboration, and I really very much appreciate it. And again, and not last but not least, again, I want to let Phil Van Cleef, president of VCDL, make some closing statements. He came in the middle, and I neglected to announce his arrival, but I figured everybody knew who he was. So I want to have him close with some comments. Go ahead.
Actually, Pat, Kathy, right before Philip closes, can I just tell the candidates, we meant to go live and we had an issue with our recording software that connects from our recording to the YouTube. So it didn't go live, but the recording will post, and we got a lot of emails. So we posted about that. So the YouTube will be available in its entirety. But one thing that I saw Pat said in chat that won't show up publicly, if we could just go around the room to Sergio, Peter, and then Amanda, so that you can tell people live how they can find out more information about you. So give your website, then we'll go on to the next person, and then we'll have Philip close, please. Sergio?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for this opportunity. Please go to my website at sergiodelapena.com. That's sergiodelapena.com. I need your financial support as we get ready to get it down to the wire. I need your vote, and vote for me as your next governor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sergio. Peter?
I'll make this fast. VCDL, you guys are the true heroes. You are the ones who protect and stand up to protect your Second Amendment rights in Virginia every single day. You need a governor who's got your back. I'm going to be that governor for you. Go to peterduran.org, find out about my platform, and I look forward to talking with you more. Let's protect our rights, both here in Virginia, and thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Amanda?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in this evening. A special thanks to VCDL, just not only for this candidate forum, but just for your continued efforts. You couldn't ask for a better president than Philip Van Cleef, and he has stood right beside me, supporting and speaking on my bills in the Senate. And he was always right there for me, even when the NRA wasn't. And so kudos to you, my friend. And my website is chaseforva.com, chaseforva.com. I just
All right. Thank you, Amanda.
encourage you to donate to VCDL.
Amanda's cutting in and out a little bit there. Pat, do you have anything to
It is
say before we
well
go to Philip?
I do. I want to say a couple of things. First, thanks to all of the candidates that have participated in this and the other two forums. I know your time is very precious. I also want to say thanks to all of the people that have signed up to be delegates this year. I know VCDL has gotten a ton of emails from people that are delegates wanting to see the candidate survey results, and we've directed them all to these forums for information so that they can make a more informed decision. And finally, I want to suggest to people that maybe didn't get signed up to be a delegate in time, but they want to get involved. If you see candidates that you like, work for their campaign, volunteer. You don't have to be in their district, but get involved in the political process, because if you don't help make these decisions, somebody else is going to make them for you, and you may not like the decisions that are made. So thank you to all the VCDL members and supporters. We do work off of your membership dues and your donations, and the PAC works entirely off of donations. So if you can spare a couple of cents here and there, you know, even a dollar here and a dollar there, they add up. And when you pool your money like that, it has a lot more impact. So we do appreciate your memberships, and we do appreciate your contributions.
Thank you, Pat. And that website would be vcdl.org/donate, and you can donate to either the PAC or the VCDL organization or both. And you can also join, whether you're a candidate or whether you're followers of these candidates, you can join at vcdl.org/join. Thank you very much. And Philip, go ahead, sir.
Okay, well, like everybody else has done, I want to thank the candidates that showed up. I really appreciate that. Peter, it was good hearing from you. Sergio, I haven't heard before, but thank you very much. Good job. And Amanda, yes, great job. All three of you. It's going to be tough. I didn't hear anybody out there where I said, I don't think so. All of you have got your hearts in the right place. You're patriotic. You want to fix the Commonwealth, and that's wonderful. That's what we need. Now, I will also say I am sorely disappointed in Pete, Kirk, and Glenn, who've got their priorities wrong because they weren't here. Gun owners are looking to find answers. And we look at priorities. Where do we fit on the spectrum? And, if you don't show up for this, it's not sending a good message about priorities. And that's why it was all the more important that you guys had a chance to show up. It just makes me wonder if a few people were afraid of some hard questions. You guys didn't flinch. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Wish
Phil.
you all the best.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night.